later.
Yeah.
I have a dentist appointment.
So there's lots of videos on the heart. So I would really suggest, what I'm interested in is you having an idea of how it works. I'm not interested so much in all the little particulars. I just want you to have an idea. So if someone were to just ask you, hey, how does your cardiovascular system work? You know, what's the point? What's the point of the heart? What's the point of breathing? You should have some idea. You should be able to talk about it. Right, so I would like you to know how blood flows through the heart. So there's lots of videos on that. You could type in blood flow through the heart. Khan Academy has some good videos on it. I've got something I can post. Oh, I've got this. So first, what I'm going to do is just kind of give you, I want you to understand the idea of how it all works. And this is, cardiovascular system is probably the one system you're going to spend the most time on if you go into whatever program you go into. So first thing is that the whole point, the main point of like breathing and heart and blood and all that is to get rid of carbon dioxide. So some people think that we're breathing to take in oxygen, but actually we're breathing to get rid of the carbon. And so if you look at oxygen and carbon dioxide, the only difference between that is the C. So it's like the oxygen is going into your body, it's grabbing the C, the carbon, and then it's going out of your body. So this is what comes in and this is what goes out. So we're trying to remove carbon. That's why you're breathing. You're not, what makes your body want to breathe is not the desire for oxygen as much as it's the desire to get rid of carbon dioxide. If you hold your breath and you really feel it, you're feeling not the lack of oxygen, you're feeling the buildup of carbon dioxide. Let that stuff hang around in your body too much, and this gets converted to an acid. So it'll break your cells, and that's how people die. That like it's when they don't breathe, it's the buildup of carbon dioxide. So you have an exchange in your body to do this. You have an exchange between your lungs and your tissues. They are trading back and forth. The oxygen is going to the tissues, from the lungs to the tissues, and the carbon dioxide is going from the tissues back to the lungs. So that sounds kind of easy enough. Lungs, tissues, tissues, lungs. The heart is the one that's going to mediate this, and it's the pump. By the way, the vessels that this blood goes in, it's different types of blood. So you have some blood that has lots of oxygen in it, so we just call that oxygenated. Sometimes they will use the word oxygen rich. That's actually a better notion. I just call it oxygenated. And then you have blood that doesn't have as much oxygen. We call it deoxygenated. That's not an accurate term because deoxygenated blood actually has some oxygen in it. It's just that it's not a lot. So if I were to look at like the blood vessels coming around my shoulder and going down my arm, I've got an artery going down, and I got a vein, a few, right? I've got arteries going down, and I got veins coming back. So from my heart, there's an artery delivering oxygenated blood down to my arm and my hand and feeding all of my cells with oxygen. Then all the vessels coming back are veins. So they're delivering deoxygenated blood, right? Same way everywhere. Up my neck, I've got carotid arteries delivering oxygen up to my brain, and then I've got the jugular veins that's delivering carbon dioxide back to my heart. So if you follow the heart, if you follow the tube that comes out of your heart, you could follow it going up your neck, and then it splits and splits, it becomes smaller and smaller, right? And that's feeding oxygen, it's oxygenating my head. But then you got to get that stuff back to your lungs. So this is where the heart comes in. The heart is actually the one that's going to mediate all of this. The heart is the middleman. So it's you've got the heart, and then so the heart is saying, okay, give me the blood, I will send it to the lungs, and I will get it oxygenated. And then it's telling the lungs, give me the blood, and I'll send it out to the tissues. So it's in the middle. The heart pumps the blood to all of your tissue in your body, all of your cells, and then it gets back the deoxygenated blood. And when the heart gets that back, it sends it to the lungs. It sends it out to get oxygenated. So it sends that blood to the lungs, it gets oxygenated, and then that blood comes back to the heart again. So it's leaving the heart as a deoxygenated blood, and it's coming back to the heart as oxygenated. Then the heart sends it out to the tissues. It leaves as oxygenated, it comes back as deoxygenated. So it's just the heart is a middleman. And it's a pump. It's not only the middleman, it's pumping all of this. It's pumping blood down to your feet. And then and then think about this, it's also pumping the blood back up your leg and back to itself. So it's like a loop, right? You've got like a loop going down to your feet and back up to the heart again. You've got loops from heart down to your hands, back to your heart again. Right? So it's like this constant circulation. And then there's also a different circulation where the heart sends blood to the lungs. So my heart's sending blood here, and then it's coming back. And then it's sending a new batch of blood out to the lungs, and then it comes back. So that's another type of circulation, right? So there's a circulation that involves your lungs. We call that pulmonary, because it's lungs, pulmonary. Pulmonary circulation, that's just the heart sending blood out to the lungs to get oxygenated, and then it comes back to the heart again. And then there's another one that's going to your hands and your feet and your brain, your whole system, right? We call that systemic circulation. Sending blood out to all your cells, and then all that blood coming back to the heart. So that's kind of the idea. The heart is pumping blood to two different places at the same time. It's pumping blood to your lungs, but it's also pumping blood to like all your other cells. The blood that is pumping to the lungs doesn't have a lot of oxygen in it, but the blood that your heart pumps to all the cells does have a lot of oxygen. So let me show you in a different way. Instead of doing a heart, like how it really looks, I'm just going to put a box. So I want you to understand the concept of it. So here's the heart, just a box. We're going to divide the heart in half. That's it. So we divided it in half. There's a right side and a left side. When you look at stuff, it's always assume anatomical position, so you'll learn about that like in a week. This is anatomical position, right? Hands out, and so it's facing you, right? So this is I have to really think about this. I'm left-handed, holding a pen on my left hand. This is my left This is my left side, and this is my right side. Right, and so now I have to do this. I'm like, okay, so this is right, and this is left. Because I can't get it. I can't do it. This is what an EKG that measures your heart activity. It looks kind of like this. Sometimes I'll do it, like I'll put the electrodes on, right, and it'll look like this. Get what I'm saying? It's actually, this is more like it is, right? But it'll look like this. It's like upside down, right? And so when that happens, I know why. Because I put it on backwards. Because I can't get left and right. So I'm an idiot. So it comes up upside down. Left and right. Left and right. So anatomical position, right? Left is on this side, right is on this side. The left side only deals with oxygenated blood. In books and videos, they color it red. Your blood doesn't really, your veins look blue, but on some of you, but the blood's really red. It's just, I mean, don't worry about it. It is red blood, right? There's slight differences in the looks between them, but it's not actually blue. You don't have blue blood. But anyway, the veins kind of look blue, and we color the veins. And so anyway, the left side it's oxygenated, and then the right side is deoxygenated. So the heart is split in half, at least as soon as you're born. The heart's split in half. So what comes into the left side leaves the left side. What comes into the right side leaves the right side. So you imagine the heart as being two parts, two halves. They don't mix the blood once it's inside the heart. There's no mixing. Better not be. So we got the left side and the right side. And already we can kind of figure out, you know, obviously we have blood coming in, and we have blood going out. Blood comes in and blood goes out. Same thing on this side. And so we know what kind of blood, so we can already figure out where it's coming from and where it's going. So this is blood coming into the heart, but we know it has lots of oxygen. So this blood was just at the lungs. It's coming from the lungs because it has oxygen in it. And so where do we want to send all of that oxygen? Everywhere. To all your tissues. So it's going to come in to the left side. It's going to go out to all your tissues. Then let's say this goes down to my feet, for example, right? And we trade it off. My cells take the oxygen and give back carbon dioxide. Now it's deoxygenated blood. And so it's going to come back to the other side of the heart. It left it departed the left side of my heart, but it's coming back to the right side, right? So this is from my feet. So the right side is going to get that, and it's like, oh, that's deoxygenated, so we're going to send that out. Get oxygenated. So it goes out to the lungs from the right side. It's going to come back to the lungs from the left side. So as you see here, there's like a part of the heart that ships blood out, a shipping department, and then there's a part of the heart that's the receiving department. So we can divide the heart again. Now we got four rooms or 4 chambers. So each side has a receiving department and a shipping department. So you imagine a building with 2 different businesses, and each one of them, if you go to the back of the building, you see a door for them to get stuff, right? And then there's also a part where stuff leaves. So the receiving, we call those the atrium, or atria for plural. You could use either one. So I'm writing atrium. So there's an atrium on the left side, there's an atrium on the right side. So there's a right and left atrium, right and left ventricle. The ventricles are the shipping department. Maybe you probably can't read that. So that's the 4 chambers of the heart. There's a right atrium and a left atrium, a right ventricle, and a left ventricle. They don't all work equally as hard. Some of them hustle, and some of them are lazy. The ventricles, in general, they work harder than the atrium. Because the atrium is receiving department, right? You don't have to, the stuff comes to you, right? You don't have to like go deliver it anywhere. It comes to you. So this is blood just kind of coming into the atrium. So they don't have to work very hard. But if you look at the right and the left side, these ship blood out. But one of these works harder than the other. So you think about, where is this blood going? The right atrium, the right ventricle, going to the lungs. So where's the lungs? Here's my heart. The heart's in the middle. It's not on the left side. Here's my heart. Here's my lungs. Just right there, next door. The right side just has to go next door, right there. Easier job. Ventricle has to send blood all the way down to my feet, all the way to my fingertips, all the way up to my brain. That's a harder job. The left ventricle works harder than the right ventricle. So we have a left ventricle, we have a right atrium, a left atrium, a right ventricle, a left ventricle. So these are chambers, right? Rooms. When blood leaves a chamber, a room, it goes through a door. And those doors, which we call valves, they're all one-way valves. I'm just kind of clearing up the. So I'll just kind of do it in blue. They're one-way valves. It's like the door to this classroom. This classroom door opens into the classroom, but that door doesn't open into the hallway. That's it, it opens one way, right? And so the blood, here's the blood in the atria. Eventually, this top part of the heart is going to contract, is going to beat, and it's going to put the blood into the ventricles. The heart doesn't beat at the same, this whole heart doesn't beat at once. The top part will beat, then the bottom part will contract. This will contract, and then it rests. So it's like this. Top part contracts, then bottom part contracts, then the whole heart rests for a second, top part contracts, atria contract, ventricles contract, not at the same time, and it all rests. Oh, I'm doing it. I just wanted to see if I can do that. So when the ventricles are contracting, the atrium are not. Atria are contracting, the ventricles are not. They don't all contract at the same time, never. But the top part will contract, bottom parts relax. So when the atria contract, it pushes the blood into the ventricles. Then it's the ventricles' turn. Then the ventricles are going to contract and the atria is relaxed. That blood all tries to go up through these doors back. They try to go back to the door they came in from. No, it closes the doors. So when they try to go back in, it's going to shut this valve. And that's it, you can't get in. Right? Every time your heart is beating, that's what you're hearing. Like when you hear your heartbeat, you're like, that first sound, you're hearing these doors close. And the blood's kind of hitting up against it. It can't go that way. Instead, what it does is it finds another door. There is a door here that goes out, right? So they go through the other door. So there's another, I'm just kind of putting them wherever. So they go through these valves instead. Right? You can't go this way, those close, because these doors open in, so it shuts it. These doors open out, so there you go, you go out that way. So these are valves. So you've got 4 valves. So whenever you leave a room, you go through a door. When you leave a chamber of the heart, you go through a valve. And these valves will close too, because that blood, when this contracts, it squeezes, right, and it pushes the blood out. But then when it relaxes again, that blood tries to go back, right back into that room, and it will close the valve. So blood wants to move backwards. Whenever the heart is not forcing it, it wants to move backwards. So like if you feel your pulse, like your radial pulse, it's pulsating, right? It's whatever, pulsating. You're feeling the contraction of your ventricle. Because your ventricle is contracting, relaxing, contracting, relaxing. Every time it contracts, it pushes the blood out. There's the blood. Then your heart relaxes. Then it contracts again and pushes more blood out. Then it goes further. Then it goes further. So your blood in your artery is like, it's going like that. It's not flowing. It's pulsating through your body. So, and it doesn't flow back. When this ventricle relaxes, the blood will not flow back in because these valves are closed. So these valves have names. I can talk about them together. For example, if I want to talk about these 2 valves at the same time, I'm going to call them AV valves. A standing for ventricle, atrium, and V for ventricle. Those are my 2 AV valves, atrioventricular valves, but you just call them AV. Those are my 2 AV valves. If I want to be more specific about it, talk about one side versus the other, I'm going to call this side mitral. Some people, mitral, and some people call it bicuspid. Most people don't call it bicuspid, but bicuspid is fine. This side we call tricuspid. Tri meaning 3, and then cusps, like a cusp. So tricuspid, this one's also called bicuspid, but more often we call it mitral valve. This is the valve that usually gets messed up on people, if it's a problem, right? And if the mitral valve doesn't close all the way, like there's 2 doors, right? And sometimes the doors don't close perfect, right? Because doors get old, and then you get like a space between the door, and then the blood can seep back through, which it's not supposed to do, right? Or maybe one door goes a little bit in, like it starts swinging back in, and then blood can kind of get in. So that could happen to people, like it prolapses, like maybe the valves will just open too far and blood can get back in. So, of course, if that happens, well, anyway. Names: mitral valve, tricuspid valve. Here's 2 valves leaving the heart. They have names. We call these semilunar valves, or SL. Semilunar because they look like half a moon. Lunar moon, right? Semilunar. They look like half a moon, that's why they call them that. But the names, right? No one calls them, people just, okay, let me give you the names. This one is called the aortic valve, AORTIC. This one, since it's going to the lungs, we call it pulmonary. We got 4 valves: mitral, tricuspid, aortic, pulmonary. got 4 chambers and we got 4 valves. The 4 chambers are right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. Whenever you go from an atrium to a ventricle, you have to go through a valve. Whenever you go from a ventricle out, leave the heart, you have to go through a valve. So I'm going to erase some of this stuff to get because we have a lot of stuff going on, and then let's follow a drop of blood around the heart and around the body. So most books and videos and stuff, they're going to start with the right atrium. So we'll start with the right atrium. Here's the blood. The blood is going to start in the right atrium. The blood is going to flow through the valve. So you have to know what valve is after the right atrium. Right, so it's the tricuspid. Tricuspid valve. And into the right ventricle. Is this blood oxygen rich or oxygen poor? Or is it oxygenated or deoxygenated? I hope you said deoxygenated. So it's all deoxygenated right now. So we know where it's going to go, right ventricle. Eventually it's got to go to the lungs. So we're going to, it's out through a pulmonary valve. Into a pulmonary artery. So that's the pulmonary artery is a tube that's leaving the heart, right? It's the artery is like the interstate, right? It's the interstate that's connecting the heart to the lungs. So an artery is anything that's taking blood away from the heart. So we don't, some people think, we tend to think, oh, an artery has oxygenated blood, an artery's red, a vein is blue. That's not always the case. It's not about the type of blood that's in it, it's about the direction that it's going. Vein is going towards the heart, and artery is going away from the heart. So in this case, this is an artery, but it has deoxygenated blood in it. So this is going to the lungs. Pulmonary artery will go to the lungs. Obviously, I'm not getting you every single step. But pulmonary artery, then to the lungs. Okay, now back, return trip. That blood goes to the lungs. And when we're at the lungs, we're going to make an exchange. We're going to trade off the deoxygenated blood for oxygenated blood. You're going to breathe out the carbon dioxide, and you're going to breathe in oxygen, and then that oxygen is going to go into pulmonary veins. So now we're headed back to the heart. There are veins, so veins are going to go toward the heart. It's not, this is deoxygenated blood. This now is oxygenated. So since it's oxygenated, what side are we going to? Oxygenated blood, we're going to the right, to the left side. And since it's the receiving department that gets the blood, it's the it's the left atrium. I'm going to continue this whole thing on this side, but I know that looks messed up. I should have switched it. So left atrium, now we're in the left atrium. So from the left atrium, you got to go through another valve. go through the mitral valve into the left ventricle. Then the left ventricle is going to contract and push that blood out of the left ventricle. So it's got to go through this valve. That valve is called the aortic valve. The blood, because the vessel that right after the aortic valve is I'll give it to you, the aorta. When you look at pictures of the heart, you're going to see this big vessel curve that like loops up and then it drops down. That's the aorta. It like arches up, right? So the aorta, and the aorta becomes all of your arteries. We just say arteries. You're like, yeah, but there's an artery here. Like, so arteries are, when I say arteries, I really mean systemic arteries, arteries going to your whole body. You know, but really when we just say artery and we don't use the word pulmonary, if I just say an artery, then you know it's an artery, like the arteries in your arms and legs and stuff like that, right? So the aorta becomes all of your arteries. And the arteries become capillaries and stuff like that. So all the arteries are going to different places in your body. So I'm going to put here tissues, all of your tissues. Or you can say cells, because that's all tissues are, right? Tissues are groups of cells. So we have to get oxygen to our epithelial tissue. We have to get oxygen to our connective tissue, like bone. We have to get oxygen to our muscle. All your muscle cells, all your epithelial cells, bone cells, whatever. So at the tissue, we're doing the opposite. We're giving the tissue oxygen, and now the blood's going to get back carbon dioxide. And now it goes through veins. So now all the veins are coming back. All the veins in your body are headed toward the heart. I've got one more vessel, which I'm going to put up here. So go up this way. All your veins all converge into one, well, two really. Vena Cava. The Vena Cava is going to go into the right atrium. And we're back where we started. So it's going like this. I did it kind of messed up where I started and ended, but you know, it's a circle, right? So we're starting here, I'm going down this way, and I'm going down this way, and then it's back to here. So if I were to ask you, I think you should know which of these is carrying oxygenated blood and which of these is carrying deoxygenated blood. You could memorize everything, but there's an easier way. Everything after the lungs is oxygenated until it gets to your tissues. So here's the lungs. Okay, this is oxygenated blood, all the way until I get to the tissues. And then after the tissues, deoxygenated. Deoxygenated all the way until I get to the lungs. It's deoxygenated until you get to the lungs. So everything between lungs and tissue is oxygenated. So you'll see here that our veins have deoxygenated blood, but the pulmonary veins have oxygenated blood, right? So it's not always about the type of blood that's in it. All right, I gave you a lot of stuff, but that's kind of a crash course into the. I never drew the heart. If you look at videos and look at the heart, it looks a little. I think it's complex, so it adds some difficulty to it. I really want you to kind of have an idea about where does blood go, and generally how does the heart work. And you can see that like a cardiologist is going to look at cardiac output. So when we're looking at what is coming out of the heart, we're really talking about the ventricles. When I take blood pressure, right, it's measuring, when you get a blood pressure, you get like these two numbers, right, 120/80. So it's measuring the pressure in this artery, which is called the brachial artery. It's measuring, like you get two numbers, right? Like 120/80. I'm measuring the pressure in this artery every time the ventricle contracts. The second number is the pressure in this artery every time the ventricle is relaxed. So, anyway. Not that I want you to know this, I'm just saying that if you understand how the heart works and what its purpose is, and then when I throw in a lot of, well, I'm not going to give you any more detail, but in future classes when you have like a lot of detail, you'll understand it. So you're going to, if you're going in, if for those of you that are going to be like nursing students or whatever, medical something, this is not over. It's just beginning. You're going to see all these words over and over and over and over. So just get the idea of it now. All right. I'm going to end this lecture. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask. If you don't have any questions, you are free to drop off.